brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking hosts, the good old boys. And now it's sippin' time.
Yes, it's sippin' time again, and hello and welcome to this Sips episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. As always, we are the best thing on at 2 a.m. This is a 1-hour show that makes the occasional attempt to be entertaining for some reasonably small portion of that time.
I think we're going for 20 minutes today.
Boy, you're an overachiever, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, well,
we
we'll
got
give it our
lots
best
to drink.
So this is Made Man Bob, and joining me today, our Made Man Maury.
Good morning, Bob. I love the basement. You've done an outstanding job today.
You should stay in the basement. It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again. Good old gal Denise.
Okay, I'm not really sure about that, but thank you for having me here. And I brought the fresh rosemary, gentlemen.
And good old boy Wade.
How do I get out of the basement? I'm very scared.
You cannot.
It's like the Hotel California.
Yeah.
You can check in, but you can never leave.
Maury and myself are with the Bourbon Mafia. The Bourbon Mafia is a nonprofit organization that is composed of bourbon enthusiasts and industry professionals. With representation in 8 states, our members combine a love of bourbon with a passion for charitable work. The group uses their love of our native spirit to raise money for local and national charities through rare bottle auctions and other themed events. You can check them out on Facebook at the Bourbon Mafia. Show is also sponsored in part by the Fort Lauderdale Whiskey Society. To find out more about the society and their events, you can find them at ftlws.com. And our sip segments are all about wine, distilled spirits, tea, coffee, whiskey, and other kinds of beverages. And today's show, we're going to be discussing some lovely port wines. And the wines that we have today are a Fonseca Siroco extra dry white port. We have a Taylor Fladgate chip dry white port. We have Croft pink port. That's a new one. Croft Reserve Tawny port. Fonseca Bin 27. And Taylor Fladgate 20-year-old Tawny port. So we're going to ask Maury to give us a little bit of information about our SIPS ratings.
Thank you, Bob. Our sips ratings are as follows. 1 sip. Give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth.
Gangadine, water. Gangadine, bring water. Bring water.
2 sips. Nice. But what else do you have?
Well, isn't that nice?
3 sips. Interesting. What was this again?
Interesting.
4 sips. Let's keep this a secret to ourselves. Pour me another.
That's classified.
5 sips. Oh my. I was unaware anything could be this good.
Oh my goodness.
Yes! 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 Yes!
I'll have what she's having.
You wish. I've seen what you're having, and you're not getting that response out of it.
Oy vey.
And thank you for Denise for that lovely intro. So we're going to have you tell us a little bit about port.
Great. Well, this should be educational and hopefully not a bedtime story, but once upon a time. Port, or Porto, is a fortified wine that is produced in the Douro Valley area of northern Portugal. A fortified wine is made when neutral grape brandy is added to wine to raise the alcohol content.
I'm all about raising
What
the
could be
alcohol
bad?
content.
This practice has its roots in history when wine from this region was sent to England aboard sailing ships, and the wine was fortified to keep it from spoiling on the trip. Smart. In port, the neutral spirit is added during fermentation, which kills the yeast and stops the fermentation, typically leaving behind up to 8% residual sugar. Consequently, many port wines are on the sweet side of the flavor spectrum. The Douro Valley has a long history of winemaking. Wine has been made there for at least 2,000 years. The first shipments of wine under the name port were recorded in 1678, and in 1756, the Douro became one of the first vineyard areas in the world to be legally demarcated. Although produced inland in the vineyards of the upper Douro Valley, the wine takes its name from the coastal city of Oporto, from which it is traditionally exported. Over 100 varieties of grapes are authorized for use in making port. The 5 most commonly used varieties are Tinta Barroca, Tinto Cow, Tinta Roriz, Tempranillo, Touriga Francesa. There's not a Francesa.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Nicely done.
And Touriga Nacional. Touriga Nacional is generally the most desired variety, but due to its difficult cultivation and smaller yields, Touriga Francesa accounts for the majority of the grapes planted. White ports are made in the same manner as the red ports, except that it's made using white grapes. Here we go with the grape names. Donzolino Bronco, actually, Escana Cow, Fagasao, Guvio, Malvasia Fina, Rabigato, and Viosino.
Donzolino Bronco. I like that movie. That was the one where he was the mafia guy and they were down here.
Ooh, that was a mouthful. Those are some interesting grapes and grape names.
The whites, especially, tough names.
Very tough, especially when you're not Portuguese.
Yeah, that would help. That would probably help. But I really don't think it's going to make much of a difference for us. We have the ability to slaughter just about the pronunciation of any language on planet Earth. So.
Well, we could have brought somebody in, but then they probably couldn't do the English portion. So,
but if we brought somebody in, we'd have to share the wine.
Ah, right. And we're not going to do that.
I'm sorry. There's alcohol, and I'm not good at sharing. Me and my buddy. So.
For I am a sinner in the hands of an angry God. Bloody Mary, full of vodka, blessed are you among cocktails. Pray for me now at the hour of my death, which I hope is soon. Amen.
Oh my God, that was wonderful. I love that.
He is my savior. Okay, moving on. So we're going to go to our first wine, and we're going to have Wayne tell us all about it.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are having 6 different ports.
I thought you were going to say 1, 2, 3, too many.
1, 2, 3, too many. 6 different ports, of which we've had 3 of them 2 different ways. So a full disclosure this morning, as we're drinking the white port, which most people have never heard of or tried, we've tried them at room temperature. And quite frankly, we didn't enjoy them as much as we enjoyed them with a little bit of chill on it. And for full disclosure, it does say it in red letters, serve chilled or over ice or with tonic.
Well,
so that being said,
technically speaking, we've had them warm, chilled with ice, and chilled with ice and tonic.
And chilled with ice and
Full
tonic
spectrum.
and rosemary. So that being said, you should go on the website and find the recipes that we'll show you today.
Like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
Oh, apparently. And sniffing glue. No, I didn't say that. Fonseca, Siroco, extra dry white port. This is a 4-year, or aging is 4 years in neutral oak barrels. The residual sugar is 27 grams per liter, so it's a lower in sweetness. The grapes are Malvasia Finca and Malvasia Rei.
Or Ray.
We can't decide. It's REI. The House of Fonseca traces its origins to the original 19th century. The first evidence of the firm trading in port is an entry dated in the 8th of April, 1815, in the ledgers of the Rio Campagna Vieta, the Royal Monopoly Company. This records the purchase of the 32 pipes of port of the firm's founders. Somebody help me here. Jose Santos Fonseca. Fonseca declared the first vintage port in 1840. Production of the white port is very similar to that of the red port, although the white port is fermented longer before brandy is added to stop the fermentation process, which is what's called fortified wine, leaving less residual sugar for the drier style of wine. Siroco is fermented half of the skins on and half of the skins off with no pumping over to maximize oxidation. Minimize oxidation, excuse me. It's 6 ports in. The wine is then transferred to large wooden vats for 4 years of maturation. So when looking at it originally, it was a nice pale color, that of straw and maybe of hay. The nose is white, dark aromas with a little bit of oak at the very end. The palate was a white, lightly sweet with a vibrant acidity and rounded and very, very interesting with a little bit of oak. That was the first go round, which was at room temperature, which is literally at room temperature. Then we added a little chill to it. We put it in the refrigerator and chilled it down to proper temperature tasting. And it really came around again. And then we even added an ice chip to it and a touch of tonic, which absolutely made it spectacular. So when we do the ratings, after everybody talks about it, I originally gave it a 2, then I raised mine up to 3, but Bob will talk about the final outcome when we get there.
What do you think, Maury?
Well, I think Wayne summed it up nicely. I think this is a really unique style of port. It's like nothing I can ever remember drinking previous to this. I've laid eyes on a white port or two, but it's been many, many years, and I don't remember them being quite this dry. This is very dry, very low residual sugar. And honestly, my initial tasting was that it was a little off-putting when it was warm out of the bottle. But since we've chilled it, added a little ice, and a splash of tonic, I find it very nice and approachable. I think it'd be fun by the poolside, an easy afternoon refreshing beverage. And I thought it was very, very interesting, like nothing I've had before.
And we'll be back. And we're back, and we're discussing some lovely wines from Portugal. We're discussing some great ports, and we are still talking about the Fonseca Siroco extra dry white port. So what do you think about it, Denise?
Originally, I actually liked it, even when it was warm, before I discovered that it should be chilled, and possibly chilled with some tonic. But I liked it. It reminded me of an oaky Chardonnay. And when it comes to Chardonnays, I love them big and buttery and oaky. And to be perfectly honest, that's what this particular port reminded me of. And so I really enjoyed it. And now it's changed a little bit. It's a little sweeter, a little more crisp and vibrant. And I think that I would consider drinking it in a different setting. So I would agree with Maury. Poolside or, a summer afternoon, beautiful. I would never consider doing that with a port. So
it's got a little more life to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're not going to take an 80s vintage port and sit by, a sweaty pool and drink it. No.
Oh, that's a winter drink.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what you would think of
I
when
don't
you
get
think
enough
of
of those days here.
No, that's a sofa drink for me. But
it's really opened my eyes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought when we first opened it, before we chilled it, I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was very sort of like a slightly oxidized buttery Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it very interesting. But once we chilled it, it took on a whole different life. And,
absolutely.
I took this chilled and I'm like, wow, this is an entirely different drink altogether. After we read the label like idiots, served chilled. Very refreshing. The acidity is there. It's very crisp. Really, really nice. So when we first tried it, we hadn't tried it chilled, and we had come in with scores, and some were okay and some were much lower. But once we chilled it, they all across the board all went up. So we're going to be giving this one 3 sips.
Yay!
Interesting.
So we're going to go back to Denise, and we're going to have her tell us about the next white port that we have.
Great. And the next one is the Taylor Fladgate Chip Dry White Port, or White Porto. Comes in at an ABV of 19.7%. The aging is 4 to 5 years in oak. The residual sugar is 24 grams per liter. And the grapes, and they're a mouthful, is the Viozino, the Robigato, the Malvasia fina, the Guvio, and the Orinto.
You did an awesome job with that.
Very nicely done.
Thank you, gentlemen. So the Taylor Fladgate is one of the oldest of the founding port houses, having been founded in 1692. Well known for their vintage port, Taylor Fladgate is also respected as a producer of wood-aged ports and is also known as the originator of late bottled vintage. White Porto was first introduced by Taylor Fladgate in 1934. The individual wines which make up chip dry are matured separately in oak vats for between 4 and 5 years and are then blended together shortly before bottling to give balance and character. Now, this particular white port was, I thought, in my opinion, very different from the first one. It's it's more pale in color. I thought that it was a little more delicate on the nose. Of course, we've tried them all without ice and with ice. And before we chilled them, I thought that it didn't have the character of the first, although it had the fresh fruit. It was still a little crisp, but didn't have the big, bold, oaky flavor.
It was more the Sauvignon Blanc versus the Chardonnay.
Correct. I did get on the nose, though, more raisins than I thought I would. And when you look at this and you're looking at a white port, I don't necessarily think raisins or those deep, dark fermented fruits like I do when I think of a dark red port. But I thought that the raisins came through. I thought that the finish was a little dry, but very pleasant. And then we added ice. We then added a little tonic. And once again, we have a beautiful, refreshing white port that I have been newly introduced to, and I'm really digging it.
What'd you think, Wayne?
I think Bob hit it on the head when he said this is more of the Sauvignon Blanc of the two, as opposed to the Chardonnay in the first one. And I think any of you out there that are looking to do some tastings and some drinkings, and for you cork dorks, this is the way to go, because you could create something really cool as opposed to an Aperol that is fantastic with port and sitting beside the pool in the summertime. And add a little tonic to this. It'll change your mind on port, because it's really cool. And I've been doing this a long time, and my mind has been changed.
Absolutely.
And blown.
Yeah, I really think of port, especially red, typical vintage port, as a winter drink, a cold weather drink, a warm you up inside, maybe with a cigar, maybe by the fireplace. And this is a summer drink.
You weren't even born with the sense God gave the common dog.
I'm just saying.
Thank you, Bob.
Just saying.
In case you were wondering.
So I would agree with you. It's a completely different animal, and interesting, really interesting.
Well, what was your
Spit it out. You can do it.
What was my impression?
Yeah.
Well, I let go with some of the things Denise said. I thought that this one had some more interesting flavors of, again, more of that Sauvignon Blanc style. It had some more fruit on the nose. It was definitely dry. It was even drier than the first one.
Yeah, it was the much more delicate of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one's the bolder, more in your face. The oak was much more present.
Sure.
It had that butteriness to it, and this one is the drier. Now, hold on.
Yeah, it's the drier.
It does.
It's got 24.
It's definitely got a drier finish.
24 versus 27 grams per liter is not a lot of residual sugar. difference. Yes, technically it should be drier, but it was significantly drier.
Yeah.
So I think it's just house style, different grapes.
Great.
But yeah, this one once we chilled it, oh my gosh, yeah, this is really, really lovely. So we're going to be giving the Taylor Fladgate Chip Dry White Port.
It's an interesting name.
Interesting.
Chip Dry.
All right, so
now we have something really interesting that I'm excited for you to tell us about, Bob.
Yeah, this one is a little mind bending, because this is one I've never seen, and this is the Croft Pink Porto. It is a 19.5% 0.5% alcohol. God, that's why I love fortified wines.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Exactly. And that comes in a little bit more now that we have actually taken this and chilled this, and we've made an actual, like a spritzer cocktail with it, because now I've found my new beach cocktail. I think even Spicoli would approve of this. Founded in 1588, Croft is the oldest firm still active today as a port wine producer. The company is well known for its vintage ports as well as its range of wood-aged ports. Croft created the pink port category with Croft Pink, and it is the first to display an attractive pink color achieved through white contact with the skins, followed by a cold fermentation for 7 days that preserves its fresh, they say raspberry and cherry flavors. Let's see. So, again, we tried this one unchilled, then we tried it chilled, we tried it with a little ice, and then we actually made a cocktail with it.
Started out as strawberry wine.
Right.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was very strawberry, very fruity,
and sweet.
And very, very sweet. And as soon as we took it and we chilled it, it changed entirely. And then we took it, and after we chilled it, then I could see where this would go. So we got a rocks glass, we got some seltzer water, we got a little bit of rosemary here, and made a cocktail with it
From the garden.
And I am telling you, I have found my new beach cocktail. This is absolutely awesome. It is an entirely different wine altogether.
So, Wayne, when you tried it prior to it being even chilled, you and I agreed, maybe not our jam. And then what happened?
That was not my jam at all, because it was a bright, vibrant color, and the color didn't match what was going on in the mouth. But again, we didn't know what this was because Croft, quite frankly, was the first persons to make this, and we didn't know what was going on. So we experimented with it. I didn't give it a high rating at first, but now with this cocktail and a slight chill on it, I think this is a winner out of the ballpark.
Yeah,
And
this
right now
this
with
one,
rosé all day.
Yeah, this one has changed more dramatically and
Than any of them.
in score bigger than anything so far.
And I got to tell you, you put it in a low ball, you put some ice. It's just beautiful. It's not a rosé. It's not a Cosmo. It's got a beautiful color. It's got a beautiful rosemary garnish.
Yeah.
It's a lovely drink.
I'm drinking port wine by the pool.
That's right.
That's a little mind bending.
Yep.
But the rosemary on the nose just really adds a certain dimensionality to it. I think that it's not just a visual garnish. I just love the aroma of the rosemary as I'm taking a nose of the wine and then a sip.
Kudos to
And you
Wayne
don't
for looking
necessarily
that
even
up.
taste the rosemary. You smell the rosemary as you're drinking it. And that's what gives it.
And that's all you need. You
It's
don't
awesome.
need to chew it.
It's awesome.
So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, Wayne, and
Good.
helping us
But
to
yes,
create
thank
this.
you, Wayne, for pointing out that Croft is the first and only that we know of to produce a pink style port. And maybe they're following the footsteps of the rosé all day crowd.
But the berries come out still, but they're tamed down now, and it just you're getting the cherries, you're getting those ripe berries.
And listen, at 19.5, it could be dangerous poolside. I mean, it goes down
Careful.
so nicely. It's wonderful.
But interesting, if you look at the
drunk and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
if you look at the residual sugar, it is not the sweetest of the lineup today, yet it really came off as very sweet at room temperature.
Yeah.
Without a little bit of
it came off much sweeter than the residual sugar would imply. It was almost like fruit punchy.
Yeah.
But wow. I mean, this is really, really nice.
Yeah, that was fun.
Definitely see myself
Drinking more of this.
picking some of these up. And we're going to give the Croft Pink Porto, stunningly enough, we're giving that 3 sips. I mean, well done, guys. Really well done.
Yeah.
And I'll keep planting rosemary.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Denise, for the rosemary.
Thank you for the rosemary.
All right, so we're going to go to our next wine, and we'll have Maury tell us about that one. But
does internet porn know you're cheating on it?
Oh, Bob, you weren't supposed to let that out.
Just asking.
Did I just snort?
Yeah, I'm just
I
asking.
think I snorted.
Okay, well, on that
me and Archer are asking.
At least you didn't shart.
on that note, The next wine will be the Croft Reserve Tawny Port. ABV 19.9%, aging 7 years, residual sugar 123 grams, and the grapes are the Touriga Nacional, the Touriga Franca, Touriga Barroca, Touriga Chao, and Tinta Chao, and Tinta Amarela. Drawn from a reserve line of fine wood ports, which have been aged an average of 7 years in seasoned oak casks, the individual wines are then blended to guarantee a consistency and quality. The result is a complex yet accessible tawny port that is perfect with dessert but can be enjoyed at any time. So this is a really interesting wine. Most of us are familiar with tawny ports that have quite a bit more age, 20, 30, 40 years of age. They tend to be more in the earth tones in terms of color. This one is a fairly similar color to the pink. It's definitely got red tones to it. And it is more red or brick red and a whole lot less amber than, say, a typical tawny port. That said, it's got a really lovely nose with lots of notes of caramel and raisins and a little bit of nuttiness. Definitely not as nutty as a traditional tawny port, but definitely raisin and stewed fruit. On the palate, it's luscious, it's mouth coating, it's got a really nice viscosity to it. There's a lot going on. There's some red currant.
Drink it in. It always goes down smooth.
There's some spice, some red currant. There's definitely some strawberry jam, a little bit of dried fruit, some figs, creme brulee, even a little bit on the end. It's got a nice medium finish. I thought this was lovely. It's almost like a bridge wine between a tawny and a traditional ruby or vintage port, in that it's definitely got the red fruit and the red color of a vintage port, yet it's got some of those notes and spice and toffee that you might see in a tawny port. So an interesting, and it's 7 years old. It's fairly young in the tawny spectrum, but I thought it was quite interesting. Wayne, what did you think?
Well, first of all, I want to ask you, for those of us that don't live in the winter wonderland and live in Florida where it's hot all the time, what is the difference between tawny and a Porto?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So tawny ports are traditionally wood aged, referred to as wood aged ports. So they're aged in wood for anywhere from 20, 30, or 40 years, and then they're bottled. They don't achieve any additional greatness in the bottle. They're ready to go when they come out of the bottle, right then and there when they come out of the wood. A traditional ruby port has very little time in oak and is bottled young, and then we allow it to age in the bottle, much like we do many of our fine red table wines, and they evolve and mature in the bottle, and the tannins soften, et cetera, et cetera. They tend to retain much more of their red coloring. And then lastly, we touched on briefly is the late bottle vintage, which one of these guys has invented, which essentially tries to bridge that by aging it a little bit in oak so that it's almost ready to drink, and then bottling it as a vintage or single year port, and it still retains a lot of that red and ruby color and gives you sort of the benefits of both an aged or vintage ruby port that's ready to drink almost immediately.
Thank you for that clarification. And I think this tawny port is absolutely fantastic. It reminds me of the Winterland. I mean, after dinner to have a sip of this with the family sitting around the fireplace, sitting around s'mores, even in South Florida, sitting around and enjoying a sip is fantastic. And if you haven't had tawny port and you've had regular port, venture out a little bit and try the tawnies because they're fantastic.
Agreed.
Yeah. This was lovely. I mean, it was extremely well done. It's got all the stuff in it that I'm looking for in a tawny port. It's got that caramel raisiny, that port character that no other wine on earth is really going to give you, which is why I think, because I love, port barrel aged spirits so much. But this one, it's just, this one is a little on the younger side, so you've got that fruit on the front that you normally wouldn't get, that sort of that ripe red fruit on a tawny port. So this one is definitely very interesting.
And even the vintage ports, by the time we get around to drinking them, we've aged them 10 or 20 years.
Oh, yeah, at least,
a lot of the fruit has started to fade.
Yeah.
People are now first.
So this
drinking
one's
their
got the
70s
tawny characters on the back end, but it's got the sort of the fresh fruit on the front. So this is definitely very well done. Red currants, almost jammy in the mouthfeel on it. You're definitely getting the nuts, not like you would with a traditional vintage, but extremely well done. I really enjoyed this one, and we're going to give this one 3 sips.
Beautiful.
3 sips is good.
Interesting.
3 bordering on 4. I thought it was well done.
I agree.
All right.
I love this.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far so good. We've had 3 very surprising ones that are pretty new to all of us, and we've had a very interesting tawny that sort of breaks out of the traditional mold. So far so good. So we're going to go to our next port, and we're going to have Wayne tell us about that one.
So the next port we're going to talk about is the Fonseca Ben 27, which is a fantastic port. The ABV on it is 20%, so it's got a little bit of alcohol in it, for those of you that don't know that. 20% is good. Aging is 4 years in oak barrels.
And we'll come back and get the rest of the information. Hey, and we're back, and we are discussing some lovely port wines from Portugal. Hilarious, yes, I know. So we had Wayne telling us about the next one up, the Fonseca Ben 27 port. So take it away.
So to continue on, the Fonseca Ben 27 port, the residual sugar is 97 grams per liter. So it's going to be a little bit on the sweeter side. The grape varietals are a bunch of grape varietals. Torrega Nacional, Torrega Finca, Tinta Braco, Tinta... Somebody help me.
Maurice.
Tinta Chow, and Tinta Amarilla. There you go. I am so gringo. I'm sorry, folks.
It's okay.
Ben 27 is produced primarily from grapes from the Fonseca's own
Quintas
in
the Cima
Corta. This newly developed
robotic Portos.
Torres.
That's TOES, by the way.
Yeah.
Port toes.
Toes,
Yep.
like
T-O-E.
your toes on your feet. Technology is trending the grapes, allowing the winery to maximize the quality of the fruit by imitating the traditional action of human feet, which is I Love Lucy stamping on it, and avoiding damaging to the bitter grape seeds.
Oh, that's
How cool is
interesting.
that?
Yeah, that's cool.
That would have been good if I read it beforehand.
Fake
That's
feet.
okay.
Fake feet.
Fake feet. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not to be confused
Robotic
with
fake
news.
feet.
Robotic
we don't
fake
want Maury's
feet.
feet in there. Good Lord.
The color on
So
it is
cool.
absolutely spectacular. I'm looking at it now, swirling around my glass, and we might have mentioned in a previous podcast where it was a CSB, which means can't see bottom. You cannot see your fingers at the bottom of this glass. It's absolutely fantastic. The nose is fresh, rich blackberry cassis and just dark red fruit. Let's smell it again together. I think it's fantastic. The palate, very velvety, smoothie. It hits the tip of your tongue, dances over the middle, and finishes long at the finish. And I think it's fantastic at the end of the meal with any dessert, or if you might be sitting beside the fireplace in the winter having a cigar, you're going to do well. What do you think?
I would agree,
It's a
Wayne.
wonderful description.
And this Ben 27 is what some port houses refer to as their house style port. Again, it emulates the idea of a vintage or ruby port, but without having to age it. It's basically ready out of the bottle. And again, this has been 4 years in wood, so much like a late bottle vintage. Very consistent.
Wood is good.
Wood is good. Consistent style each year. These are kind of their go-tos. They're very affordable, very approachable pricing. And it's really a great place for people to start with port, especially, like you said, after dinner or by the fire. Because it's fortified, it will last a little bit longer than a typical bottle of red wine. I thought this particular wine was really delicious. I must admit, it's opened up and improved quite a bit in the glass, and we talked about that, about when do we rate them, at the beginning or the middle or the end. I was a little underwhelmed at the beginning of the show today, but as it sat in the glass, it's come back around, and I like it a lot. I've had this before and remember it as being much better. It's not too sweet. It's just really nicely balanced. And I think for a house style port, as a foray into ruby or vintage style ports, I think it's excellent, well done. And for the price, I don't think you can beat it. Denise?
Oh, it's delicious. I love this, but I agree with a dessert. And I'm thinking, what dessert would I have this with? And I teeter from or between like flourless chocolate cake to creme brulee. And that is the gamut of desserts. So clearly, in my opinion, this would go with anything. And so I love this. It's got a great mouth fill, I guess. It's jammy. It's delicious. I'm excited for this and for the next one.
Maury, you mentioned as we were talking about, the red wine gamut of this, what would you say was the timeline that you can open up a bottle port with you and your significant other? And if you didn't finish it, how long do we get to keep it for? Being that it's fortified, you're going to get a little extra time.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I personally recommend refrigerating. It's food, and we put most of our food in the refrigerator to prolong its life. I think if you refrigerate it, you can easily get a couple weeks out of it. Certainly the first week would be safe, easily.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure whether or not a little
Well, if you refrigerate it and use a little argon gas,
argon would give you a lot.
I've gotten weeks out of a bottle of port in the refrigerator if I make sure I get good layer in there, displace all the oxygen, get it in the fridge in the back where it's nice and cold, and 3, 4, 5 weeks later I take it out. But
if you're argon, most of us are not. Most people are just opening it, putting the cork back, sticking it in the fridge.
Well, then just drink
it.
You
know what? And you can get a week or two out of it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of the fact that it is a fortified wine, it tends to hold its character. I mean, in my experience, it holds its character for a good bit longer time.
Yeah. And contrast to the Madeiras, which will last
forever. Yeah, forever.
Which is good for those that want to try port, because maybe you don't have 4 or 5 ounces of port at a time.
And the other nice thing about port is a lot of times when you go to the store, they do sell small bottles. They're smelling 200s and 375s, so it makes it much more approachable. Because again, it's whereas you may get a nice light Sauvignon Blanc or whatever your poolside wine may be, you may down a bottle or two of that over the course of a weekend. But a port, generally, you're not going through glass after glass of a nice.
You're talking about 3-4 ounces.
He said weekend. He's never been to my house.
Well,
that's right.
3 hours.
Yeah, I mean,
But I agree.
Some of us
the vintage ports will typically come in half bottles, which is a nice alternative.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not aware that any of these house style ports, like the Bin 27 or similar from other houses,
I just haven't looked.
I haven't seen them.
I mean, I tend to go through a whole bottle, but that's just because I'm, I have issues.
They're delicious.
But it's the same thing with any dessert wine. I mean, if you get, a dessert wine from France or a dessert wine from the United States, usually those are available also in smaller format bottles.
Absolutely.
Because again, you don't go through the quantity of them, because the flavors are just, so much more there. The sugar is so much more there.
But unlike, for example, Canadian ice wines, it really doesn't have anything to do with the yield per se.
Yeah.
That they would offer it in a smaller bottle, correct?
Yeah. No, it's I mean, when you get like a good German ice wine, in a really good year,
right?
They don't put it in smaller bottles to get more bottles out. They put it in smaller bottles because you just simply, if you drink a 750 of it, there's a chance you may go into a diabetic coma. So,
yeah, okay,
that's that's where that's where it comes in. But it's just something that, again, like we've said before, when you're dealing with wine or whiskey or any beverage, it's a journey. You're learning, you're trying new things, you're trying to get stuff that fits your palate. This may not be something you're going to drink in great quantity, but I always tell people, look, if you can find a smaller bottle of whatever you're going to do, get the smaller bottle. And that way you're not committing to that much. Or, when people say, I'd like to try, some different whiskeys, find a good whiskey bar and try them there, or find a good wine bar. Right. That's got a very good selection in a Cruvinet that you can go in and you can try it by the glass or half a glass to expand your palate and just learn what it is that you like.
Some of these new wine bars sell it by the ounce, single ounce, 3 ounce, and 6 ounce wine.
Well, we know a local store that has an Enomatic machine where you can put your card in and dispense 1 ounce, 2 ounce, 4 ounces. Sometimes that machine actually works, and you can sample a small quantity.
Sometimes.
I also happen to know where that idiot keeps the cards, so I really don't ever have to pay for it. So that's kind of nice. But we are going to be...
how do we rate this?
We're going to be rating...
Bin 27.
Bin 27.
I think this one might be good.
We're going to give it
ready?
4 sips.
Ready?
Ooh.
4 sips.
Again, this one was on the border, but it really improved, even more so with the air on it. So we're all going on to our next one. So we're going to have Maury tell us about our last port.
Thank you, Bob. The next wine is the Taylor Fladgate 20-year-old Tawny Port, 20% ABV. Aging is 20 years in oak. Residual sugar is 111.17 grams per liter.
Yeah, baby.
Again, a similar lineup of grapes: Touriga Nacional, Franca, Barroca, Tinto Roriz, Tinto Chow, and Tinta Amarela. This Tawny Port is made from selected grapes from the best vineyards of the Cima Corgo and Douro Superior. Individual wines are produced in different vintages, are aged in 600-liter oak casks for years, over which time they will lose their young, dark purple-black color to gain that distinctive tawny hue from which the wine takes its name. As tawnies age, the wines take on increasingly more nutty flavors and become more concentrated as the barrels lose 3% of their volume every year to evaporation. And so these wines are again really a completely different beast from some of the things we've had earlier. We had a little hint of that the Croft 7-year Tawny, but this is really traditional. It's got that classic intense amber or tawny color to it. The nose is really interesting, spice and jammy with a lot of nutty aromas, and you get some orange blossom and some oak. On the palate, this wine is just lovely.
Yes, it is.
Very concentrated flavors, very rich, long, mellow finish. These to me are a lot like sherries. Now, sherries vary quite a bit in style as well, and one of these days we'll talk more about that. But to me, these older tawnies start to approach a sherry in that they take on more of a nuttiness. Again, they lose that red color. They lose a lot of their fruit. And they're picking up really interesting characteristics, some of which are from the barrel and some of which are the undertones of the fruit. So I thought this was very nicely done. I really enjoyed it quite a lot. Denise?
Yeah, no, I love this. The color is beautiful. It's a traditional tawny. It's got beautiful legs. The nose, as you mentioned, is extremely interesting.
You have competition.
And I get on the palate honey and prunes and orange blossom, and right at the end, right at the finish.
What is your favorite word?
Wood. Wood is my favorite word.
Would that be
wood?
Okay.
Wood. Okay. Would that be morning wood or afternoon wood?
I wasn't going to say it.
She said
just wood.
That's wood.
Just wood.
Yeah.
And on, thank you, on the finish, I get not wood, but nuttiness. So nuts and nuttiness, and it's just delicious.
And what else?
It's wood and nuts.
And nuts.
And it's a beautiful
Bob, stop
port,
laughing at her.
And I love it. So I'm going to drink it and let the rest of the crew just carry on. Carry on.
Wayne, you're turning red.
I am red because we mentioned wood and nuts for the last 30 seconds. So I'm not going to say either. But the nose on this is absolutely spectacular. Mm-hmm. This reminds me of my original first port. And I think this is what brought me into the port world. I was the champagne guy, the red wine guy, and then I discovered port one time in Europe. Not in Portugal, but traveling throughout Germany, and bought a bottle of a vintage port and sucked it to the very end and squeezed out the very end of it through cheesecloth.
And you thought wood and nuts was
I was just
an
continuing
interesting
on
play
in this
on
little
words.
morning spectacular of.
Well, I agree. I mean, these are nice. I think that as you get to these 30 and 40-year-old tawnies, and Bob recently had one that was much older than that, again, they lose all semblance of grapes, and it's hard to tell where they came from. But this 20-year really has a nice balance. It's still definitely got a little bit of fruit. It's much more stewed fruit than fresh red fruit. The raisiny notes and things of that. I think this is really a sweet spot.
I think it's spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some
Dangerously
older
spectacular.
tawnies, but I had absolutely no idea how long they possibly could age until I was in Las Vegas and got to share that 1870 tawny port. Yeah, I'm still
From which house?
I'm still speechless. It was from a different company from one of the ones we're having here. It was a private barrel, and I would when I saw the label, I said, "You're kidding! There's no way. There's absolutely no way." But a fortified wine, you know, I mean, I've had Madeiras that old, so it made sense. And I have to say, it was life altering because I've never ever seen any port that I've had even close to that age. I had no idea, but this is just here's the thing. We had the earlier one that we had, which was a little bit more fruity. It was a different tawny, but it was lovely. And this is more of your classic style.
This one's
tawny port.
approaching a sweet Madeira style as well.
Exactly.
It's definitely got the raisiny
Oh, you're getting
tones
that
of
shriveled
honey.
up dried fruit and the shriveled up dried raisins and red currants and just, you know, all those flavors. You know, when I got these ports in, and when we were working on doing some wine shows, this was one show I really wanted to do was a port show, because I do love a port wine. It's, you know, it's hard to get. I mean, you're about the only guy I know that will drink it with me. Most of the people I know won't. It's not a big thing in South Florida in this climate.
Yep.
But I was
I'm
very
guilty
excited
of buying
to do this
them
show.
and putting them away because no one will drink them.
And coveting them like Gollum, you know, and then just not getting around to opening them. So it's just a great experience to get to open these. And this is just a classic tawny. It's got that brick red, just gorgeous color to it. It's got everything. It's hitting on all the cylinders that you want, and it's absolutely lovely. So we're going to give this one, the Taylor Fladgate 20-year tawny port, 4 sips.
Solid 4.
Classified.
Solid 4.
Very nicely done.
So what did you guys think? I mean, this was a fun one.
Yes.
And surprising.
First port episode.
Yeah, the first 3 completely surprising. Completely.
I was educated.
Just the colors in the glasses in front of me are amazing.
Yeah.
And you did mention 1840, right?
1870. Yeah.
1870.
Whew.
So this was a lot of fun, guys. But that's all the time we have for today. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and you can catch all of our episodes where you found this one, as well as on terrestrial and satellite radio, and online at iTunes, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio, CBS Radio, radio.com, and pretty much anywhere you can listen to a podcast. The easiest way to find this show on your phone is to ask Alexa, Siri, Google, or whoever the lady is that talks back to you when you look at the phone to play podcast Sips, Suds, and Smokes. We love your feedback, and you can reach us online at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every day at SipSudSmoke, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. And you'll also be able to interact with the thousands of other fans on those social media platforms. You can also check us out on Instagram at SipSudsandSmokes or at MadeManBob. Do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode. If you're listening to us online, it's a big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. I want to thank our co-host for joining us today. Thank you, Maury.
Thank you, Bob. It's been a privilege being here today. I'm looking eagerly forward to our next voyage to another island for interesting wines.
We'll have a wine episode. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you. This is a beautiful lineup. I really appreciate it, and I'm having...
And thank you, Wayne.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to go have some coffee now. Enjoy your ports.
Coffee. Don't be a quitter. Alcohol Anonymous is for quitters. And for Sips, Suds, and Smokes, this is Made Man Bob. We thank you for joining us. Remember, life is too short to drink bad wine.
Well, we don't have any of that in front of us, so...
No, we had a good day.
No. A fine day indeed.
Somebody pass me that bottle.
No. And no.
I just go back to
Morning
go
wood.
back to my prayer.
How long you think these whites will last open in the fridge?
One more.
About
2
5
more
minutes with you guys.
Yeah.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.